Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films. Have a very special guest today. You may have met him before. It's Cole Jackson. Cole, how are you doing? We're here to talk about Bradley Bozeman. Can you please introduce yourself? Give us a little background about why the O-line is important to you and tell people where they can find your work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm pumped. I'm pumped. We finally got to do this. So my
Yeah.
name's Cole Jackson. You can find me on Twitter at Cole Jackson FB. I'm working with Mike Crawford right now at a new YouTube channel called Two Guys Watching Football. We picked the title because it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just going to be two guys watching football, trying to learn more about the Ravens, trying to learn more about some of the X's and O's and bringing on guests to try and pick their brains and learn more. So we're trying to breed an educational environment and kind of just learn off one another. But my passion, my love is in the offensive line play. Growing up, I played O-line most of my life. Started coaching football, learned very quickly I was a lot better coach than a player, and that kind of love just kind of led me into learning more, doing a lot of reading, a lot of film watching. Now I'm teaching my daughter how to play O-line, which is fun. So yeah, man, just fell in love with it, fell in love with the game. Just so passionate about trying to learn more.
Yeah, two guys watching football. So if you guys have found my channel but haven't found theirs yet, go over and check out Michael Crawford and Cole over there, bringing on guests, talking X's and O's. Great show. I'm subscribed. You guys should subscribe to it too. But Cole, let's jump right into Bradley Bozeman. Now, he's kind of gone under the radar because of all the other additions we've had on the offensive line. But I wanted to ask you some specific questions about him. Number one, with his move from left guard to center, how do you think that'll either improve or be a challenge for him from a run blocking standpoint?
It's a really good question looking at the usage of Bradley Bozeman as a left guard from 2019 and 2020. We all know the numbers. They pulled him a lot. They pulled him a lot in power and counter to the right side. If you go back, my partner Mike, he charted the 2019 Ravens run game, and our predominant run outside of the veer option was power to the right side. And you know, it was it's kind of tough. This has been kind of a chicken and egg conversation for me. Were they pulling because they wanted to run behind Marshall Yond and Orlando Brown Jr., or were they pulling because they were so comfortable pulling Bradley Bozeman, or were they pulling because they thought they could limit Bozeman having to drive block right at the gap where they were aiming if they ran power to the left. So it doesn't really matter where you land, but the key is that he pulled from left guard a lot. He's going to be doing a lot more down blocking. He's going to have to do a lot more reach blocking. It's going to be really interesting, but I think personally, putting him in more of a box is going to help him because his big thing is he's not very mobile. And when he struggles the most is gaining leverage over a guy that's a little bit wider on him. So when he had to get out there on five techs on outside zone, or even a four tech on outside zone, or he had to really drive block a three tech and take over that play side shoulder or outside shoulder from the defender's perspective, he kind of had some struggles there. But then when you move him over to center and he's dealing more with one, two techs, zero techs, that sort of thing, he can kind of use his power. He can wash guys out rather than having to kind of be the lead blocker on that play. So I think it's going to really help him. I think he can go back to doing what his strengths are rather than trying to mask weaknesses. And he did develop a good skill set pulling, but he didn't pull at an like I didn't consider him an elite puller, a Zach Martin type puller. So that losing that kind of aspect isn't a major factor to me personally. Going back to my coaching days, like you can coach things, and I think you saw Bozeman's intelligence really shine with how he took angles, how he kind of consistently picked up the right man when he would pull around the corner into the gap. So you're going to lose a little bit of that, but I think in terms of his drive blocking skills, he's now in a position to succeed.
Well, I tell you what, I think there's more to pulling than quickness. Like one of the things that I really
100%.
appreciate about Bozeman is his recognition and his body control. Cole, like he wasn't out of control when he was moving on those pulls.
No.
He was very much under control. They started cutting him towards the end to try to just blow up that spot on the field. He handled that really well. I'm going to link some video over our faces just to show him pulling on this video. But I personally am of the perspective that with a more powerful, prototypical drive blocker at left guard this year, that you'll see a different kind of running scheme, probably fewer pulls if I had to guess. And I think that they used Bozeman on those pulls for, like you said, chicken and the egg. I think it was a combination of all the reasons that you mentioned there. But moving on to the pass, what about pass blocking? Just throw it up to you. How do you think you'll handle that center pass blocking?
My analysis is actually pretty similar, and I think the best games, if you're sitting at home and you're like, okay, how can I go watch film and check what this guy's saying? Go watch him against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Either way, Cole. Either
Either
way.
way works. Go watch him against the Steelers, and specifically watch how they would line up their defensive line to get him on a matchup with Cam Hayward at the 4 tech or 5 tech. When they're getting Bradley Bozeman in a situation where he has to take 3-4 kick steps from the inside to get to his inside man, it's the same concept. He's in a position where he's not going to be as successful because of his lack of mobility. But when they had situations where he was a little bit more man up onto it, or
Hayward.
or Hayward, or even Alualu, or
Right.
the kid that was with Wormley. Chris Wormley is another good example. So a bigger guy that's more inside where there's less space, he was more successful. And that's kind of what you're going to see at center. He's going to be in more of a box. He's going to be dealing with guys with less space to cover, but he has to be a lot more powerful. And, the big thing on the inside that I think is a big misconception is, like, take an offensive tackle that's slow coming out of college, for example. They're like, well, let's just kick him inside and everything will be fine because he's slow. Well, yes, but it's way quicker on the inside. And I find Bozeman is quick, but Bozeman is not fast. And what I say by that is, if he's at center and he has a 1 tech rate on him, he's going to quickly get to him, hit his hand strike, get his feet set his anchor, and get into his pass set. If he is at left guard and he has to kick 3 times, it's those kind of 3 quick steps where, there's less quickness involved and there's more speed involved. And that's where Cam Hayward has had a heyday with Bradley Bozeman when they've played each other. Now, I mean, Hayward's an elite player, so, he gives guys hard times all the time. So it's not necessarily that, but it's just, if you want to look at the skill set, how the skill set translated into center, I think that's a really good matchup to see 2 different rush styles specifically to it versus Hayward, where Bozeman had to take them on.
Well, I tell you, this is the part of his game that I'm really excited about, is the pass blocking at center. For the reasons you mentioned, number one, the quickness aspect. What you said about trying to move slow tackles into guards. Like, things happen a lot faster inside. Decisions have to be made. By the way, it's one of the reasons, maybe we'll talk about this offline, that I think Tyree Phillips is going to be a better tackle than he is a guard. I think mentally it's a challenge for him. I think if you stick him out on the island, he can let his physical ability take over. But as it pertains to Bozeman, Cole, was like 2 or 3 times a game we saw Bradley Bozeman get crossed up by a quicker, faster player with, and there's more space at guard, just like there is at tackle. There's a little more space for defensive tackles to work at guard. Center, you're boxed in as quickly as closely as possible. So I think that's where Bozeman's skill set will take over. He's not the most powerful drive blocker. He's not going to manhandle some of these nose tackles or 1 tech, 0 techs that are lined up over him. But he's a very good positional blocker. And with a limited amount of space, I think that his pass blocking is going to shine at center compared to left guard. He's not going to get beat by these quicker 3 techs like he was last year by these nose tackles. But there's a lot more to the position than just pass blocking, run blocking. When you're talking about center, there's all kinds of intangibles. So could you please touch on that, and how do you think Bradley will fit from as a center with the intangibles, the leadership, and all that stuff?
Yeah, the big thing for me is, and I've argued with a couple people on this on Twitter, it's his snapping. So I get that he hasn't played center for a couple years, and I can see how that might cause anxiety. But if you go look at the system that he played at Alabama, the scheme is not the same, but it was all pistol and shotgun when you had Tua and Hurts. And so it's the same idea of where he's going to be having to snap into shotgun or pistol, all day. We never run under center. It's actually one of my biggest critiques of the offense. Everyone's talking about route combinations, and I'm like, well, why don't we just run some plays under center? Get a little bootleg out of center going, give me something. But I think Bozeman's going to translate really well where he has to do a lot of those snaps. I think he earned my confidence. And I'm checking in on all of our beat reporters, Jay-Z, Jonas, all the number one guys out there. And there hasn't been an issue in OTAs. It's going to be a topic at training camp preseason. I'm not going to worry until there's some reason to worry. So that's number one for me. Number two, his leadership, specifically in 2019 when Skura went down. Bozeman was helping out with some of the line calls. Yonda took over, obviously a huge role. It's Marshall Yonda, but Bozeman was taking on a little bit of that. 2020, he did a little bit of that too. I mean, if you look at our line, he was the only guy that played the same position all year. Right. So that type of continuity, leadership, that sort of thing. You see his leadership in the community, the work that he's doing with his wife. Like, he's just a great guy. So if you're looking at intangibles as a factor, this guy is rock solid. Like, I have zero concerns. It's part of the reason why I think if he does ball out, he's actually going to be in line for a nice contract with the Ravens. I think they're always looking for good people, and I don't discount that factor.
No, it's a kind of mandatory for the Ravens, especially if you're going to get a second contract. I mean, they won't even touch players in the draft that they can't see fit with them. They'll take a slightly less talented player instead of taking the chance. But the intangibles for me, just to give my take, I think that it's something that you definitely have to wait and see on. But I don't see any, like you said, concerns. I won't be concerned until he gives me a reason to be concerned. That's kind of exactly how I feel. Like, Bradley Bozeman, if nothing else, gives you the feeling that he's a rock solid player. He's limited athletically some, but he punches above his weight in just about anything you ask him to do. So leadership, I mean, you can see his teammates' respect for him if you pay attention close enough. When they talk about Bradley Bozeman, leadership and accountability always come to the forefront. And and the snaps, I mean, I think we're just mentally scarred from a historically horrible performance that ended our season last year and almost cost us a playoff spot. So, all things equal, I mean, 49 seasons out of 50, snaps aren't really an issue. And I don't think there'll be an issue with Bozeman. So we're getting close to our time here, Cole. Can I get your final thoughts, expectations, anything else you want to say on Bozeman and his move to center?
I've been calling Bozeman a center for 3 years now. So last year I was doubling down. This year I'm tripling down. In all seriousness, all the evidence in front of me, everything that I can take, all those transferable skills, which is all we really have to look at is, assessing his skills as a guard and projecting it to center. But when I put together that, when you look at what the position requires, what the strengths and weaknesses are vis-a-vis center versus guard, it all lines up for a positive outcome. Like, I mean, anything can happen. Maybe he comes in and it's a dud, but based on all the evidence I have right now, I'm very confident that not only him walking in there, but him beside Zeitler is going to be that kind of solid center guard combination that we've needed for, I guess only a year because Yonda hasn't been that long, but it felt like a long time. So I think it's going to be nothing but positive outcomes.
Me too. And you can't discount having solid guards, the effect that having solid guards are, because they're working in tandem with both the center and the tackle that's next to him. So the initial signing of Kevin Zeitler was a big W for this franchise, I think, because maybe his best days are behind him, but he's still a solid player. You see him practicing his 3 kick steps in the delivery room. It's good to see, I guess. And he eats and sleeps football, so he fits right in with the Ravens. But Cole, I wanted to thank you so much. I'm going to have you right back on with us, and we're going to talk about another aspect of the offensive line. But I'm going to have your YouTube linked, your Twitter linked, everything down below. So if you guys want to follow Cole, strongly advise that for all things offensive line and other things too. He actually does have comments on other things besides the offensive line. And one more thing, Cole, down here in Baltimore, we call them route combinations. They're not like root comes from a tree. Like root is like a tree or a plant, man. It's the routes, okay?
You're gonna hear a lot of Canadianisms coming out of me, man. Wait till we start talking about Z versus Z and
Oh, mercy. Thanks, Cole. I love you, brother. Have a good one, okay?
Thanks, brother.